Right, let's look at these questions then. We have 0.75 and 0.5. We can do that lots of different ways. We could just do it in our heads, that a half and a half is 1. That would give us 0.25 left over. So we could do it in our heads and we'd get 1.25 as the answer. If we're not quite sure, we can always just do it by setting up the numbers. 0.7 is 0.25 then. Well, most of these you should be able to do in your head. 1.2 minus 0.2 would give us 1. We've got an extra 0.5 we need to take away, so 1 minus 0.05 would give us 0.95. If you want to do a little check that you've not made a silly mistake in that, you could always add 0.25 back here, just to make sure that you end up at 1.2. Because if you do that as an addition, you'll get this other one back, the one that you started with. So you can always do that just as a double quick check. 12.5 minus 2.6. Well, 12.5 minus 2.5 would give us 10. But we had 2.6, so we've got to take an extra 0.1 away. So 10 minus 0.1 would give us 9.9. And if you're not sure about that, you're not really great at doing it in your head, don't worry, because you can just do 12.5 minus 2.6 and do it using the carryover method. We can't take away 5 from 6, so we have to borrow 1 from the 2, making that one turn into a 1. And then we get 15 minus 6, which is 9. 1 take away 2 we can't do, so we have to borrow this one here, and we get 11 minus 2, which is 9. And we get the answer 9.9. So there's lots of different ways, but it's good if you've got good mental math skills that you can do as much of this in your head as possible. Then we have 8 times 12.5. Well, I don't really like multiplication with decimals. So what I'd probably do there is I'd double the 12.5 to 25. Why do I do that? Well, if I multiply this one by 2 and multiply this one by a half, I'd get 25 times 4. Is that the same thing? Yeah. I doubled this one just to get rid of the decimal. And I've halved this one, because if I do the opposite to these two things, if I double that one and half that one, I'm going to get the same final result. But 25 times 4 is really easy, because that one ends up being 100. So I don't need to actually do this by doing 12.5 times 8. 5 8s are 40, 8 2s are 16, plus 4 is 20, 8 1s are 8. Plus 2, sorry, 20 it was. 8 1s are 8, plus 2, 100. So I can get it like that by setting it all up, but it's much easier if you can rearrange it in a simple way. Try and do so. It saves time. It means you can work out everything in your head. Okay, so if 8 times 12.5 was 100, what's 0.8 times 12.5 going to be? Well, I can do the same thing there. I can actually double this one, so I get 25, and half that one, so I get 0.4. 0.4 times 25 is going to be the same as before, but I'm going to have one less decimal place. So instead of getting 100, I'm going to have 10.0. Okay. 0.4 times 25. How can you think of that when you're doing multiplication so that you don't make a silly mistake? What we usually do when we've got decimals and multiplication is do the multiplication as though there was no decimal there. What is 4 times 25? 4 times 25 is 100. But in the question, I had a decimal point in one of the questions. One of the numbers I was multiplying by had a decimal point in, just one place. So I have to move the decimal point one place back. So I get the answer 10. And that's a very useful technique. If you were doing something like this, 1.3 times 2.5, when you do the multiplication, you can pretend that you're doing 13 times 25. 5 3s are 15. 5 1s are 5, plus 1 is 6. We finished multiplying that number by everything. Now we move one step to the left, so we put in our magic 0. And we're now a factor of 10 larger. This number is 10 times larger than that one, so it's one step to there. And then we do 2 3s are 6, 2 1s are 2. Add all these numbers up, 5, 12, 3. And the final thing I do, so I've done this multiplication as though there were no decimals. The final thing I do is I look, how many numbers in the question were after the decimal point? Well, here was a 3 and here was a 5. So I had 2 numbers in the question that were after the decimal point. So I will move the decimal point. It shouldn't be here at 325. It should be 2 places back. So it should be at 3.25. So this is the technique of multiplying with decimals. There's lots of videos on that if you want some extra practice. Okay, then we have 32.5 times 16. What I'd probably do here again is I'd double this number and half this number. So that what I'm doing is I'm multiplying by 2 and multiplying a half. 2 times a half is 1. So I'm actually not doing anything, but I'm getting rid of the decimal points here. 32.5